Type Moon fans have three states of existence: waiting for Fate content, waiting for Tsukihime content, and waiting for the thing Type Moon announced 5 years ago and then never talked about again. And today, we're talking about that third one. Because Witch of the Holy Night, or Mahotsukai no Yoru, is finally getting its anime movie. Oh my god, yes! Holy shit! We're finally getting that out. You know how long ago that came out teased? Back in 2021. And then we just kept getting teasers. And then for 3 years, proceeded to disappear into the Shadow Realm. Until now, baby! Woo! And if you don't know why it's such a big deal, don't worry. Because by the end of this video, you'll understand why this movie could either become Ufotable's next masterpiece, or emotionally destroy an entire generation of visual novel fans! When people hear Type Moon, they think of one thing: Fate, the anime that answered the question, what if King Arthur was an anime girl? And the reason your friend has spent $600 trying to summon a PNG in Fate Grand Order. But before Fate became a global empire, before the gacha machine achieved sentience, Kinoko Nasu wrote something else, Mahotsukai no Yoru. This was one of Nasu's earlier stories, meaning this is basically prototype Nasu. Prototype, get it, get it, Fate prototype, you know, the one where, you know, King Arthur wasn't a girl. All before he discovered he could just give historical figures trauma and call it a franchise. This story follows Aoko Aozaki. And if you don't know who that is, that's normal, because Type Moon lore is structured like a conspiracy theory. But Aoko is one of the most important characters in the entire Nasuverse. She appears in Tsukihime. She's absurdly powerful, confident, and touchable, basically built like a final boss. Mihoyo, though, shows her before all of that, when she was just a teenager, confused, unprepared, completely in over her head, which makes her more relatable than 90% of Fate protagonists. Speaking of Fate, everything that comes from that series, when it comes to magecraft, mage families, mage customs, true magic, reality marbles, curses, metaphysical concepts, everything also applies to Mahotsukai no Yoru, which is important when it comes to one of the main plot points between a conflict of two sisters, Aoko and Touko Aozaki. Aoko is not meant to inherit the Aozaki magic crest. Her older sister, Touko, was the legitimate successor. The inheritance of the fifth magic to Aoko is abrupt, political, and even deeply unfair. And this shapes everything about her character. Unlike traditional magus raised with rigid discipline, Aoko is emotionally transparent, morally instinctive rather than calculating, stubborn in a very human way. She doesn't embody the cold, detached ideal of a magus. Instead, she resists it. This makes her thematically radical in the Nasuverse. Aoko's defining trait is straightforwardness, where most magus conceal information, view others as tools, suppress emotion. Aoko speaks impulsively, forms real attachments, acts on moral outrage. This isn't naivety, it's defiance. She rejects the idea that becoming a magus requires abandoning humanity, in which her journey isn't about mastering magic alone. It's about proving she can wield overwhelming power without becoming monstrous. Touko is everything a magus should be: brilliant, ruthless, emotionally compartmentalized, obsessively skilled, and yet she is denied the inheritance. The family's decision to pass the fifth magic on to Aoko shatters her worldview. Touko's core wound is not jealousy, it's existential invalidation. She followed the rules perfectly and the system betrayed her. Touko's pride is not superficial. Her identity is built on being the rightful successor, being more talented, being the true magus. When Aoko inherits it instead, Touko doesn't just lose status, she loses her narrative of self. This drives her to cold hostility. Some of the newer people out there are just like, why can't they both inherit magic? Why can't they both be heirs to the family?
Shut the up, Mike!
I wish it was something as simple as that. Unfortunately, only one can inherit a magic crest. A magic crest is not just knowledge. It's physical. Imagine it like this: a physical magical organ, a storage system for generations of research, a spiritual circuit network refined over centuries, a crystallized inheritance of the family's magecraft. It is transplanted into the successor's body through surgery and ritual. It's not symbolic. If you divide it, circuits degrade. Ritual formulas lose integrity, accumulated refinements collapse, generational optimization is undone. Magecraft improves through refinement, not duplication. Splitting it would reset centuries of evolution. There's also the biological aspect of it. Crests are biologically taxing. They rewrite the host's magical pathways, integrate with their nervous system. Stress on the body intensely requires lifelong adaptation. Most families can barely produce one compatible heir per generation. Attempting to implant fragments into multiple children risks rejection, magical circuit collapse, permanent degradation on the crest itself, death, even. The Aozaki family doesn't just hold a crest, they hold true magic. True magic is not just a technique, it's a metaphysical authority. The difference between magecraft and true magic is like this. Magecraft reproduces supernatural phenomena through the technique. It's bound by rules, and it's achievable only through study. True magic performs something fundamentally impossible in the current era. It cannot be replicated by science, no matter how advanced. It is a miracle, it's not a method, which is something only achieved by reaching the root, Akasha. It is the origin point of all existence, the source of all events, timelines, possibility, the record of everything that has happened or ever will happen, and the origins of souls and phenomena. If reality is a tree, then the root is the soil. Every magus ultimately seeks it. Touching the root grants complete knowledge, liberation from causality, the ability to rewrite or transcend reality. But there's a paradox. Reaching the root often results in death, dissolution of self, or becoming something inhuman. Alice Kuonji is one of the most mysterious and fascinating characters. She isn't just your average mage. Alice comes from the Kuonji family, an ancient lineage of witches who practice a very different kind of magic compared to modern magecraft. While most magus rely on structured spells and inherited systems, Alice uses what's called witchcraft, a more archaic and almost fairy tale-like form of magic. Her abilities don't follow normal logic. They feel closer to living stories than spells. Personality-wise, Alice is extremely quiet, stoic, and emotionally distant. She rarely shows her feelings and often speaks in blunt, almost cold manner, but that doesn't mean she lacks depth. Underneath that calm exterior is someone who struggles to understand human connection and emotion. She isn't uncaring, she's just disconnected. One of the most unique aspects of Alice is her use of ploys. These are magical constructs that resemble objects or characters from children's stories, like living dolls, creatures, or surreal entities. But don't let their whimsical nature fool you. These ploys are incredibly powerful and can be deadly in combat. In this contrast, childlike imagery mixed in with lethal force. That makes her magic so unsettling. Alice lives in a Western-style mansion and spends most of her time isolated from the outside world. She values her space, her routines, and her independence. However, when other characters enter her life, especially Aoko Aozaki, we start to see subtle changes. Her interactions slowly reveal hints of curiosity, awkwardness, and even a quiet form of care. In many ways, Alice represents the idea of a true witch. In modern times, someone who exists outside society. Bound by old rules and ancient power, she's not trying to fit in and she doesn't need to, she simply is. That's what makes Alice Kuonji so compelling. She's not just powerful, she's unknowable. And then there's this guy. Just some dude. No powers, no tragic anime haircut, no chosen one energy. Just Soujyuro Sizuki, the human equivalent of a blank Google Doc. And somehow, he is the most terrifying one in the room. At first you think, yes, the normal guy POV character. He's here, so we can relate. Wrong! Soujyuro is not normal. He's what happens when you take a human being, remove all social context, delete common sense, and install pure, unfiltered mountain survival instincts. This man doesn't understand society, money, basic human interaction, but he does understand that thing is dangerous. I should probably punch it. I swear to God, he does not process fear the same way normal people do. There is a scene, even in the very beginning of the game, where you just see him about to jump out of a fucking 3-story school building. Just thinking that that's the exit. No, not even thinking that that's the exit. It's him thinking that getting to the exit is too complicated and he has to go to work, so just why fucking not? This man will casually tank situations that should kill him, drop philosophical one-liners by accident, and somehow emotionally support 2 of the most unstable mages alive, without even trying. I mean, look, the first 3 characters I talked about so far has been with some seriousness. But with Soujyuro, you can't! You can't fucking take this man seriously, like holy shit. But besides all of that common sense shattering, there are some deeper things to this character. Soujyuro is deeply disconnected from humanity. Not in the edgy way, not in the Magus type of way, just in a quiet, unsettling way. He doesn't misunderstand people, he just isn't one of them, mentally speaking. And that's why his interactions hit harder. Because when he does care, it feels real, earned, and honestly, a little terrifying. So yeah, not a mage, not a hero, not even remotely qualified to be here, and yet he's the one holding the entire emotional core together. In a world full of overpowered magic users, sometimes the strongest character is just a guy who genuinely doesn't know when he's supposed to be afraid. And most of the story is just them talking,
Fighting invading mages, that's Aoko's sister!
eating,
Fighting to the death!
existing. Which boring stuff. It sounds boring. MiHoYo released as a visual novel in 2012 and immediately became known for one thing. It looked ridiculous. No, not ridiculous in a bad way. Ridiculous as in,
Why does this visual novel have better directing than actual anime?
dynamic camera movement, cinematic framing, lighting effects. At times, it doesn't even feel like a visual novel. It felt like a movie pretending to be a visual novel. Which is probably why Ufotable saw it and went, yeah, we can make this hurt people. Let's be honest. When Ufotable adapts something, it stops being a question of if it'll look good. It becomes a question of whether your GPU can emotionally process it. This is the studio that made Unlimited Blade Works, Heaven's Feel, Demon Slayer. They don't just animate the fights, which, again, when they animate the fights, holy shit! They animate vibes. Lighting that feels physical, night scenes that feel cold, moments that feel quiet in a way that most anime forget exists. And MiHoYo is 90% quiet emotional moments, which means this might actually be the perfect match. Or the most dangerous one. The original story is over 25 hours long, and most of that time is not explosions. It's character development, atmosphere, silence, which works in a visual novel because you're living in the characters' heads. But in a movie, you don't have that kind of luxury. You have 2 hours, which means Ufotable has to somehow compress an extremely slow burn emotional story into theatrical format without losing what made it special. And this is where things could go very right. Or very wrong. MiHoYo fans are a special kind of fan because they've been waiting for this for over a decade. Over a decade. This story has always been treated as the hidden gem of Type Moon. The thing casual Fate fans never experience. The thing hardcore fans quietly insist is Natsu's best writing. And now, it's finally getting the spotlight. Which means one of two things will happen. it becomes a definitive adaptation and introduces millions of new fans. Or visual novel fans start a war in the YouTube comment sections that feels longer than the actual Holy Grail war. There is no middle ground. This isn't just another Type Moon adaptation. This is Type Moon going back to its roots. Before Fate became massive, before the franchise expanded into everything, this was just a story about being forced into responsibility before you're ready, about feeling alone, about isolation, about slowly finding people who understand you, trying to understand themselves, trying to understand what it means to grow up, which hits a lot harder than watching Gilgamesh throw swords at people, even if that's also very entertaining. After years of waiting, the Witch and the Holy Knight is finally returning. We're finally going back to that mansion, back to Misaki Town, back to where Type Moon's most important stories began. And knowing Ufotable, it's gonna look incredible, it's going to hurt emotionally,
And Type Moon fans will love every second of it!
and Type Moon fans will absolutely not be normal about it. As these are just kind of the things I was thinking about for the last couple of days. If you played MiHoYo, let me know how emotionally damaged you are in the comments. If you haven't, prepare yourself, because this might be one of the most important Type Moon adaptation yet. And see you next time.